Here we go with the meditation from this day, the 9th of January, and beginning with so this writing is the first of the material that is in chapter 8, which is titled Meditative Thinking. It's a short chapter. So here's how it begins. Destruction. German, D-U-S-T-R-U-K-T-I-O-N. Oh, incidentally, I suppose I should say, this is writing from chapter 195 and 196 in Being and Learning. Okay. Destruction is, first and foremost, a response to the need to deconstruct or dismantle the reifying gaze that stifles the organic growth of community towards the development of inner subjectivity. Poetic dialogue is hermeneutics that follows up the diminishment or destruction of the self-certain subject who stands apart above and against the horizon of beings. We call this destruction estrangement, for it identifies the releasement of the learner, the sparing of openness. This freedom to be with, let be, unfolds from the practice of meditation that is an ongoing response to the evocative beckoning of the first questions. These questions are identified as first because they are originary. That is, they return the learner to the pathway of philosophy, to the way of the sage, the poetic dwelling. Meditative thinking is the questioning practice whereby the other as other, the visitor as stranger, makes his appearance. This estranging practice clears the gap for the passing over of evocative questioning. The abyss of possibility, this preserve of freedom, is the openness of the opening regioning that gathers and separates and thereby creates the conditions for the actuality of poetic dialogue. For the sage, the open regioning appears as the ineffable arrival of being manifesting in the appeal of language. This appeal is the most estranging event, for the appearance of that which cannot be named but beckons our response, cannot be spoken, but appeals to painstaking listening, and is heard in silence, is the insurmountable mystery of being's twofold play, which remains partially hidden, concealed, conserving the not yet. This is the truth of being, arriving with the appeal of language, the invocation that directs the proper and authentic gathering of the horizon of being, our being together. This truth is conveyed as the wisdom which shelters the freedom of the creative natality and the peace of letting be. Destruction of the judgmental and calculative cogito is thus the diminishment that at the same time signifies the releasement of openness. The emptying of the singular self marks the estrangement occurring as the response to the evocative originary question. To heed the evocative is to return to the beginning, to the root, and thus to become reconnected with the ground. To return to the ground, to the most fundamental location, the relationship of being and learning, through meditative practice, is to arrive at the destiny of learning, conscientización. This destiny, we now see, is the cultivation of mindfulness, the heeding of the directive of gathering of wisdom, unfolding with the taking of the questioning stand, with the devotion of learning, the devotion to wandering along the pathway of the enchanted region, the boundary of the boundless, the devotion to the Tao. Quote, to return to its destiny is called the eternal Tao. We say again that the leap into the mystery of our relationship with being is destiny. Our destination in our seeking is the impossibility of learning, of finding oneself in this midst of circulation of being, caught and thrown by excess, awed by the possibility, thrown by the eruption of uncertainty that arrives at the tidings brought by the first questions, specifically the saying of the nothing. Our destiny is questioning. Here we understand further that the leap is taken through the estranging practice of meditation, the crossing into nearness of the sage's poetic dwelling. To be an apprentice of learning is to heed the guidance of the sage, and thus to practice philosophy. Philosophy is thus this estranging art, a conjuring art, which enchants the poetic, and begins with the renouncement of the juridical voice. Philosophy is the useless making of meaning that conveys the silent language of being by delivering the invocation to be with, let be, through the evocative saying of the first questions, and thus cultivates poetic dialogue, and thereby the community of learning. As Heidegger indicates, in order for philosophy to be meditative thinking, quote, philosophy must return to the beginning in order to bring into the free space of mindfulness the cleavage and the beyond itself, the estranging and always unfamiliar. That is the second day in a row, and that's where it ends, from this 9th day of June. And I was going to say that that is the second day in a row where a nice quote from Heidegger, which is really, to put it in quite understated terms. I mean, this quotation from Heidegger really sets the context for so much of the writing. And it's almost as if every one of these fragments from Heidegger reminds the reader, reminds me, of just the sort of palette that I'm working with. And again, I'll read it. Philosophy must return to the beginning in order to bring into the free space of its mindfulness the cleavage and the beyond itself, the estranging and always unfamiliar. This cleavage is the gap, the threshold, this opening. This is just a great quotation, and that's what I wrote this day. And please check out the blog, Duarte Being Learning, which is on Blogger, Google Blogger, to check out my some context and commentary that goes with this video.